Welcome back to EarthX 2026, and now we've got a really, really interesting one for you. We're going to talk about Richard Cheng. Welcome.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Ah, wonderful. We are so excited to have you on because
Thank you.
this is really, really interesting what you do. Of course, there's, the legal things can often be kind of
Mhm.
confusing, and sometimes people don't understand exactly where it is that they fit into this stuff. But when we're talking about psychedelics and things like that, there's a lot of people that can't actually, where do I fit into this, right?
Right, right. Well,
Mhm.
what we're seeing in the last maybe 10 years or so, you're seeing the world of alternative substances, and that can encompass psychedelics, but also with the use of cannabis and
Yes.
ketamine and kratom and everything else, you're seeing two worlds just kind of colliding, right? Historically, we've had a healthcare system using traditional medicine, and physicians and patients are considering all the other alternatives in lieu of opioids and other forms of traditional medicine.
Because normally for a lot of people they'd be saying, well, it's 420, we'll talk about
Yeah,
Canada, but
yeah.
but
It is 420.
it
It's
is
yeah.
420. But what's interesting is the cannabis culture is kind of shifted a little bit because there's so
Mhm.
many people now, I think from our parents generation, that probably saw weed as something else, but
Right.
now there's everybody's seeing the health benefits, but people are still getting in trouble for it, right?
Yeah, cannabis has had a long history, a long, very interesting, colorful history. I mean, everything from, the 20s all the way through reefer
Mm.
madness and how cannabis has been stigmatized over the years. Um, it's changed so much, and just in the 12, 13 years that I've been involved. When I first got involved in 2013, cannabis was still highly stigmatized, even as a lawyer,
Yeah.
right? So, different law firms didn't have cannabis practices, and I think in one year they were looking at the statistics. And about 3% of all AmLaw 200 law firms had a cannabis practice, and by 18 months later, or not even 18 months later, about 30% of all AmLaw 100 firms had a national cannabis practice. And so that kind of tells you the shift of how people are looking at cannabis. And today, of course, you have the hemp consumable market,
Yes.
and then you have medical cannabis, and then of course you still, in some states, depending on where you are, you have adult use. But even within those buckets, you have different sub markets like pet products
Yeah.
or cosmetics, right, with hemp. And you have the federal government's making some really cool initiatives like the new CMS Substance Access BEI pilot program. These are all just new things that's coming up left and right.
And we're also seeing a lot more about ketamine treatment as well too,
Yeah.
which is also illegal in many ways too, unless administered a certain way. And so, where are you seeing with this?
Yeah, ketamine has experienced quite a bit of growth in the
Yeah.
last, I would say, 5 to 7 years, especially. Ketamine really kind of started in the '60s in California, and then it transitioned to being used with Vietnam vets. Right. And then today, what we're seeing is ketamine is now a Schedule III substance under the Controlled Substances Act, which essentially makes it less restrictive. So in our federal government, we have 5 classes under the Controlled Substances Act: one, two, three, four, and five. And then with the greater the number, the less restrictive, or you can look at it as the smaller the number, the more restrictive. As of today, ketamine is a Schedule III substance, and it's being used by physicians to treat various types of mental disorders, or I would call it ailments or
Yeah.
conditions such as depression, right?
Sure.
So in the last, I would say, I don't know, 5 years, I've probably launched a number of ketamine clinics and continue to advise them on how to deal with the DEA. I've been part of a couple of DEA raids for ketamine clinics, but continues to be a thriving market, it looks like. And that's a perfect example of a alternative substance to where it's a controlled substance, but it's merging with the world of healthcare. So
And also, it's kind of interesting timing that we're talking too, because we just saw that Joe Rogan was in the White House talking to,
Oh
with
yeah,
Trump with
yeah,
psychedelics.
yeah. Well, our firm is actually directly involved with that.
Amazing.
So our firm actually represents the Americans for Ibogaine.
Ah, yeah.
And so, I mean, not to get too public. I mean, there are people within our firm that's tied directly to HHS.
Mm,
Okay, not to mention any names, but our firm does uh, represent AFI, and what AFI did was they they had a very, I would say, a very strong hand in formulating that executive order that Donald Trump signed.
yeah.
I guess it was on Saturday morning
Yeah.
around 9 o'clock. And so, our ironically, Ritter Spencer Cheng, my law firm, we're directly tied to that.
It's
So
amazing.
yeah.
So this has got to be a pretty exciting time for you, right?
Very exciting time. We're probably one of the few law firms in the country that's very well positioned and equipped to advise on that new CMS substance BEI pilot
Yeah.
program. And that's really big for me, at least. The ibogaine stuff with the AFI, that's huge. That's more in the bucket of psychedelics, which we have one of the leading psychedelic legal experts in at our law firm, Hadass Alterman, and so she's kind of spearheading that project.
That's amazing. So are regulators moving too slowly or too fast for these emerging therapies?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Are regulators moving too slow or too fast?
Both,
Yeah.
both. It's long overdue,
Mm. Hmm.
so it's slow. But now that we've come to where the intersection where we come, it's moving rather quickly, and so everyone's having to catch up, right? You take the three models that's part of the BEI pilot program, one of which is actually sundowning by the end of the year, and another model is replacing it by 2027, January 1st. And so that happened. That's a very expedited process, right? So to answer your question, both.
Yeah. Mm. What's the biggest legal misconception that people have about psychedelics right now?
That it's everywhere
Mm.
and that it's accessible. It's really not. It's very inaccessible, in fact. As of today, I believe only Oregon and Colorado have a regulatory framework for the consumption of psychedelics.
Mm.
In fact, I can't remember which state it is, but there are licensing frameworks for I believe one, if not both of the states where they actually call the individuals who administer the psychedelics, they're called healers, and the facilities are called healing centers. So we don't have, of course, we don't have that here in Texas, but we have passed some legislative initiatives to do more research on psychedelics.
Yeah. Why do you suppose Texas is slower to this? Because it
Well,
seems like we're a little bit behind
that's a loaded question. I mean,
Yeah.
Texas is slow on everything when it comes to this stuff. I mean, it just
Yeah.
is. I mean, if you look at the Texas Compassionate Use Program, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it launched in 2015. I actually had a direct hand in writing some of the regulations when it first launched, and it really wasn't until this year that we had more expansion, but other states have had many more qualifying conditions as part of their medical cannabis program compared to us. We were at 1, and then we were at 7, and then 8, but that was like over like a 6-year span.
Yeah.
And so Texas likes to takes its time. Not to say it's bad. It's just I think we our constituents and our politicians, they tend to lean in a very cautious fashion on how this substance and how all these different alternative substances, how they progress and how it's being consumed by the general public.
So where do you see the first real mainstream breakthrough? Is it in medical or consumer here?
You know, I think I'm biased,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I do think that my bias has some relevance. I think if you get the buy-in on the medical, it naturally progresses, because especially in places like Texas, we take these little very tiny steps.
Hmm.
Even the federal government. depending on which administration you're talking about, we tend to take these very tiny, baby steps. We feel comfortable with this, then we feel more comfortable with this. So it's little by little. And I think the more of a buy-in that the medical community has, I think it creates a platform to allow more use in the general public. Now, conversely, I think you're going to get proponents of the overall industry that would argue otherwise, because the argument is, well, if you go down this medical route, it'll only stay there and people will keep it there, and then that limits the expansion into the consumable or adult use space.
We're seeing so many issues with uh, with psychedelics, with ketamine, with marijuana, and do you see that it's getting better? Because I feel like people are finally coming around. Maybe the
Yeah, I mean, I think it's evolved a lot,
hmm
right? Again, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that you have these different alternative substances that have different forms of stigma that associates with it. Now, I will say that, you know, for example, I don't think psychedelics and ketamine has suffered the same fate as as cannabis. So, given what topic you're talking about, given what substance you're talking about, they all have certain degrees of stigma in our society that's been fostered over time. But I think cannabis has had it the worst, just because of the history behind it, with Harry Anslinger and the Gore files, and the Mexican the Mexican mine workers. And the reefer madness and all that. It's just it's kind of suffered a different fate. But I do think some of that has gone away, especially in the last, I would say, maybe 14 years. It really kind of started in 2012, when Colorado was the first state that legalized adult use. And I remember when that happened, everybody was, kind of up in arms about it. And since then, we have, what, 24 or 20
hmm
25 different states that has adult use. So about half of the states in America are adult use states. So that, I think that's an indication of the acceptance it's kind of garnered over time with cannabis.
yes.
And if you look at the Gallup polls, it says the same thing. The Gallup poll says back in 1968, we had, what, about a 30 or 28% acceptance rate of the industry, and now it's over 80% if you look at 2026 numbers. And of course, we talked about the Ibogaine signing
Yes.
of the executive order. And quite frankly, for about 4 months after the Trump administration took office, or maybe it was 4 months ago, I was just actually reading about this morning, is that on, I believe on Friday or Saturday, um, Trump was actually asking, like, hey, are we going to get the rescheduling done?
Yeah.
So rescheduling cannabis is pretty big. It would be really big, because you're looking at the IRS 280E going away, some of the tax restrictions. You're looking at RICO going away if
hmm
it's crossing state lines, but that's just cannabis. And of course, ketamine and psychedelics, it has its own challenges and issues. I would say ketamine less, because it's already a Schedule 3 and it's more socially accepted to go to a ketamine clinic versus taking psychedelics at some psychedelics retreat in the woods of
Right.
woods of Oregon, right? It's just, there's a social construct
Mhm.
to it, in that people will make different associations.
Yeah.
No different than if you were to take THC holding a beverage versus
Right.
holding a joint. It has two very different social messages out there.
Well, and also with all of these things, I think people have a tendency to self-medicate depending on maybe they've
Yeah,
tried it socially before, but
yeah.
then they figure out that maybe I need this medically too. So where is the good crossover to where, because I think legally a lot of people can't say or shouldn't say that they have done that, but sometimes people know that they do need help with these things, right?
Yeah, that's a loaded question,
Yeah.
Paul, because
I don't mean
here,
for it to be loaded,
yeah,
but just
well, I mean, because here's the thing, right? If we're talking about cannabis, for
yes.
example, you, first of all, you have to get qualified to
hmm
be to have a qualifying condition. So if you don't have a qualifying condition in wherever state you're in,
hmm
then by default you already don't qualify for it.
Right.
So because someone who doesn't qualify for it, they may not have any other choice but to go into the legacy market, which is the technical term for it,
Yeah.
as opposed to calling it the black market. Um,
Legacy mark. I
the
haven't heard
legacy
that
market,
before.
that's right. So they're compelled to do that.
Right.
Alternatively, if they don't have the resources to go to the legacy market or the state sponsored medical cannabis programs because of a lack of qualifying condition or lack of resources, they may be compelled to go to like a hemp consumable product, like that you can get at any vape shop,
Sure.
any CBD shop, or any gas station. But then you're kind of like rolling the dice on the quality of the product that you're getting. Some not no two makers are the same, and there are products out there that are very good, and there are some products out there that are not so good, right? And everything in between. And so you're looking at a market that people may consider as self medication that is cheaper, but you're taking more risks with your health.
Absolutely. And are you seeing Texas come around a little bit more closer to legalizing? Because
Mhm.
it's a it is an uphill battle, but we've seen other states make some really good money off of this that we
Yeah.
could probably use here in the great
Yeah.
state of Texas.
Had you asked me the same question before
Yeah.
middle of March, I would have said absolutely. But since middle of March, Texas has created some real regulatory
Yeah.
barriers um, that that's that's really created some agency rulemaking
Hmm.
within HHSC and DSHS, where they've their efforts are really focused on getting rid of certain forms of the THC hemp consumable market, in particular on how they calculate total THC, because there are a lot of retailers out there who are selling uh, products that has THCA, which is THC acid, which upon combustion or decarboxylation, it converts into delta 9 THC. And so that's kind of like killed the market a little bit until there was a big lawsuit, and as of today there's technically a TRO that's in place until I guess Thursday. And then so as of right now at 11:05 on 420,
Yeah.
the market is still good on the hemp consumable
Hmm.
goods,
Okay.
and Texas is not in support of it, but they're prohibited on banning it. I don't know what's going to happen on the 23rd. I'm optimistic that we're going to get that TI or that temporary injunction. Where that leads, I don't know. But again, Texas has made a lot of progress, but along the way, the progress has intermittent prohibition efforts in there with it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So you do like say, five good things, and then you may have like two or three really bad things that happen, and then three good things, and then one bad thing that would happen, right? So
Mhm.
Texas has had a pretty interesting history since 2000, and I would say from 2015 through today. So for the last 11 years, we have had like a lot of ebbs and flows. I mean, I still remember in 2017 when DSHS was wanting to do a statewide sweep of
Yeah.
CBD products,
Yeah.
right? And CBD is not something that can create a psychoactive reaction. But out of ignorance, DSHS said, "Oh, we're going to do a statewide sweep of CBD products." Well, why? Because at the time, they didn't know any better. Now, fast forward to today, 9 years later, looking back at that proposition, that just seems like an asinine
Yeah.
proposition. Even they would admit it. It's like, well, why would we get rid of CBD products? It's because you didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, because I think there's a lot of confusion, and then there's a lot of people scared to maybe go into those gas stations or
Yeah.
vape shops and buy things because if you're driving around with it, is it legal here in Texas? And you probably get some calls about that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is legal to. I mean, it is because there's a regulatory framework for it.
Hmm.
I mean, otherwise, the retailers wouldn't have a license to sell it. But depending on which municipality you're in, and depending on how they do on-site testing, if you get pulled over, because keep in mind, smoking a hemp joint smells just like smoking
Right.
a regular marijuana joint, right? And so sometimes the law enforcement officers, they have a hard time distinguishing the two, and depending on which municipality you're in, they may have different forms of enforcement actions. But I think ultimately, regardless of which municipality you're in, if they do arrest you, if they do cite you and you challenged it, I think it's a winning argument.
Absolutely. And of course, we talked about the Ibogaine. I'm saying that right.
What's that?
That from this weekend, Trump was talking about with Rogan.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the AFI Abogain
Yes,
initiative, yeah.
Ibogaine. Tell us a little bit more about that because even I don't know as much as I should probably about that, but it seems like a really interesting thing.
Yeah, my understanding with ibogaine is it's a form of a psychedelic,
Yes.
and ibogaine is a shrub or a root and they found it in Indonesia,
Hmm.
and they've been using ibogaine for for many years. I don't want to say since the beginning of mankind, but it was a local medicine for a
Hmm.
long time. And so with AFI, the Americans for Ibogaine, it's the initiative is to make Ibogaine more accessible
Hmm.
and to consider it as a form of treatment and to also carve out some money to do more research on it. And that's what the executive order did. And AFI was probably the big driving force behind it, and it's quite frankly, it's really targeted at veterans because you're looking at veterans who've fought for this country and veterans who've endured some pretty horrific things,
Yeah.
depending on which war you're in. And now they're blended in society. They may suffer from different forms of anxiety or depression, and they don't want to be medicated to the degree that opioids may create or whatever other types of medication. So I think ibogaine is just another alternative, another pathway for their overall treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see where it is that it goes. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of people didn't, not to get political, I don't think people expected Trump to come around to this, right?
This is what I heard. This is what I heard is that Brian, the CEO
Hmm.
for AFI, he and Rick Perry went on the Joe Rogan show.
Yeah.
In fact, our firm actually blogged on this. So there, for those of you who are watching, go to ritterspencercheng.com and we have actually there's an actual blog on it. I didn't write the blog because I'm not spearheading that project, but it talks about how it was, the genesis behind all this. But apparently they went on the Joe Rogan show and they had a good conversation, and it took one text message or one phone call from Joe Rogan to Trump say, hey, we need you to sign this executive order, eh, which to Rogan's credit, it tells you how much pull that guy
It's
has.
true. It's
So
true.
as a podcaster,
Yeah.
right?
And now a Texan.
And now a Texan, right?
We'll take him.
Yeah, and I think he has a great podcast. I actually have my own podcast
Great. Tell
called
us
the
about that.
Sativa Segment. It's actually about I've made 40 episodes since August of 2022, and it's everything politics to fundraising to operations and business in cannabis. But it's hard doing a
Yeah,
podcast. It's
sure
really
is.
hard, and the fact that he's made it to such a success and to be
Mhm.
able to just call the president up and say, hey, need your help on this,
Yeah.
it tells you he's done a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you've got a great story, and in fact, since you're from here, I'll tell you that
Yeah.
I co-host a show with Drew Pearson, one of our great Dallas Cowboys,
Oh, cool.
who caught the Hail Mary, and it's now the 50th
Yeah.
anniversary of the Hail Mary. So we talk about those Hail Mary moments, the moment in your life or career.
Mhm.
We just kind of had to go for it, and it worked out for you. I'm so curious to know what that was for you.
Um, I'll be honest. Probably launching the law firm.
Yeah.
Spending over a decade in big law and getting a steady paycheck, and kind of rolling the dice. And in fact, I remember, and I was an equity partner at a large global law firm. It still is second largest law firm in the world, right? And so you're getting paid a pretty steady paycheck,
Yeah.
a pretty
It's
penny.
good work.
Yeah, it's good work, and so that was kind of like, at the time you saw that as your Super Bowl ring, right? That's the brass ring. But then, because there were some rate issues, I just, the inflation of legal rates was so high that at the time it was really at the height of COVID, and a lot of my clients are in the healthcare industry. In fact, most of them are. Yeah, they kind of really took a hit, and so I had a chance to leave Big Law, and I did, and then shortly after that, I launched Ritter Spencer Cheng, and that was kind of another big male Harry
Yeah.
Hail Mary, and that's I didn't know what was going to happen,
Mhm.
because the way we're structured, it was either going to be feast or famine. So it was I would consider that probably my Hail Mary.
Well, I'm sure we'll see you around at EarthX. There's so many great panels, so many great
Yeah.
people to connect with. And is there anybody specific you're looking forward to seeing, or anything you're looking to do?
I would love to meet different investors who are interested in this industry, in the whole EarthX initiative. Just because I'm curious. Historically, I've represented a lot of PE firms and investors and people who are looking to inject capital into different ventures. Um, I'm curious to see who they are here.
Yeah.
So.
Hmm. Well, I know there's not a lot of cases that you're currently working on that you could probably talk about, but can you talk about some wins that maybe that we weren't aware of that were really, really cool for you?
So most of what I do is I do M&A work. So I do a lot of mergers and
Good.
acquisitions. And so we
A lot of
recently.
wins there.
What's that?
A lot of wins there.
Yeah, so we've closed a few good deals
Yeah.
recently. We've also, gotten a physician that was accused of some really horrific things. Um, and he got into some governmental enforcement action trouble. We'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
And you know, it took us a while, but he's my client, and we essentially got the entire set of allegations dismissed. But I would say probably the biggest one, believe it or not, is we've been representing this big metals company for the last year and a half, and uh, we really didn't. We really thought we were going to go to trial. And I know this sounds kind of counterintuitive because as lawyers, you kind of want to go to trial,
Right.
even though
Yeah.
I'm not a trial attorney. One of my partners are, but these are my clients, and so I had a very heavy hand
Yeah.
throughout the mediation process. It was a mediation process that was probably the one of the most difficult mediations I've ever been part of. It was a 4-day mediation, and I can't believe we got it settled. And so I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, that's great. What's the best part of what you do?
Um, the best part is probably having my clients, maybe not at the moment
Hmm?
when it's happening, but several months that's passed and they get a result, they come back and they show a true level of appreciation.
Yeah.
And so it makes your it makes your work worthwhile.
It's fascinating what you do. When did you first become interested in this line of work?
It was it's kind of an interesting story. So I finished law school in 2006, and I started off my career in just general mergers and acquisitions, and then I transitioned to the healthcare space. So I was at a law firm, and they said, "Hey, we need someone to spearhead our healthcare regulatory, Stark anti-kickback, and whistleblower
Yeah.
practice." And that kind of led me down this path of healthcare. So I had historically been a healthcare attorney, and then one day I was at a national firm, and they said, "Hey, we have some clients in New York. They want to know about physician liabilities, prescribing versus recommending medicinal cannabis." And that was in late 2013, and that's kind of how I fell into it. And then next thing you know, I became the outside general counsel for the Texas Cannabis Industry Association, and then that floodgate opened, and then I joined a national firm and was part of a national cannabis practice, and then went on to lead the hemp practice group at DLA Piper. So
I know that you're seeing a lot of younger people be interested in
yeah.
this. So if they're going to law school and they want to do what you do, and they're looking up to you, going, "See, I want to do what you do." What
Mm.
advice would you give them?
I would say learn the industry. I actually have taught as an adjunct faculty at UNT Law School on cannabis law, and one of the things I tell my students is, learn the industry, learn the nuances, and if you learn the industry and you understand the dynamics of the businesses and the people who are involved, that really helps develop that area of practice.
Mm. And what do you keep in mind? Because I know this can be frustrating at times dealing with all this. What do you keep in mind that kind of keeps you on the right path of doing what you're doing? This is great work.
That I'm doing, it's for a greater cause, and it's something that's needed.
So here at EarthX, who are you looking forward to connect with?
This is my first time attending EarthX, so I'm open to whoever wants to meet.
It's great. And where can people find you, not only here but beyond?
Yeah, if you go to our website, Ritter Spencer Cheng, it's a local law firm. We're based in Dallas, Texas, and as of this morning, actually, we just announced that we've launched 2 other offices,
That's great.
in addition to the 3 that we already had. So we have 3 offices throughout Texas, and we have a Miami, Florida, and Minneapolis, Minnesota office, and we're a full service business law firm. But our 2 biggest verticals, or our 2 biggest industries that we serve, are healthcare and alternative substances.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, what you're doing is absolutely fascinating. I know there's a whole lot more to learn, and we encourage you to check out even more. So thank you so much for
Hey,
being with
thanks
us.
thanks for
Really
having me on,
appreciate it.
Paul. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it.
And stay tuned because we've got more here for you at EarthX on the podcast stage next.